All right, great. So welcome everybody. Thanks for taking the time out of our holiday to join this class. I'm going to try to keep it an hour and try to get as much information in and certainly save room at the end for Q&A, and I will pause throughout to see if there's any questions along the way. So if you can't see or hear me, just let me know. But hopefully this is working well. So basically I'm going to focus primarily on Vanna, but I'm going to touch on just sort of how I look at the market. What do I look at in the beginning? This is a build on, Fatty did a class on Gex and Vanna, and Dath has a write-up on Vanna. So this is a build on that. Even if you didn't catch those EDUs, hopefully you will still get a pretty good understanding of this. I'm not going to really focus too much on the fundamentals. I'm going to focus more on the application, right? So like, what we look at when, we're trading basically. So this is just kind of an overview. What I'm using right now is, just a side note, it's Canva and it's their whiteboard. I use this a lot just to like throw a bunch of screenshots in and then like, kind of draw things over it. It's how I kind of do my note taking when I'm not using like say Excel. So you may want to utilize this throughout the day. It might be something that you want to use to capture your thoughts. And right now I'm going to just go over an overview, and I have about 4 examples of Vanna. So 2 of them are going to be static, meaning we'll just look at the screenshots. And then the last 2 will be live examples. And I tried to get a little variation. Obviously, it depends on what I can record at the point in time, and so you don't get every variation, but hopefully I have a variety of ways that Vanna can play out. So just so that you can kind of get your head in the right place when you're looking at Vanna. So let's get into it. So what is Vanna? Vanna is the sensitivity of the delta with respect to change in volatility. You don't really need to know too much about that. Again, what I'm really going to focus on, what do we look at when we look at the Vanna chart? This is obviously from Sheldon Nainberg's book, The Option Volatility and Pricing. I haven't really gone through this. This is definitely on my list of things to do just to get like a more robust understanding of the exposures. So this is just for future reference. So the way I start out the day is the very first thing I will look at is DDOI. And when we get into the examples, I'll touch on that. I look at the DDOI, and then as the exposures are up, I track them every 30 minutes to an hour. An hour is really when you see the like if you go back and review your day, you will see from an hour increment is where you see the most impactful changes. But obviously you want to, kind of look at the 30-minute slot just to see if you could get an inkling of what's happening. And how do I track this? I could just track it by literally taking notes on a notepad or taking screenshots and dropping it into, this whiteboard that you see here. And then I'll show you my setup, but it's basically, these are the exposures. I keep it simple. It's DGEX. It's a net split, and we have the raw net GEX, net Vanna, net speed, and then gamma flow. So as we're going to focus on Vanna, basically what you need to do when you look at Vanna is you want to track 3 things. You want to identify the 0 point or points. Sometimes there's multiple, but generally towards the end of the day, there's only going to be 1. And same thing with the flip point. There's either going to be 1 or a couple. And when you have multiple 0 points or you have multiple flip points, my rule of thumb is to wait for the data to sort of clean itself up, right? Because at the end of the day, what happens is as the market makers, move price up and down, and Vanna gets to 0, that's basically when that strike is in the money. So when it's in the money and it's at 0, the volatility has basically, kind of gone from a high point to a low point. So it's kind of like a balance of that strike. So at the end of the day, when the market closes, those strikes do go to 0. The Vanna 0 point is where price will land, because that's where like everything kind of settles. So that's why it's important to track the 0 point and where it is relative to price. And you want to see how it changes throughout the day. And again, when there's multiple 0 points, you don't really have a clear direction because you don't know where price is going to go. Same thing with the flip point. These are very closely together. They're kind of one and the same, but at times you will see slight nuances. And hopefully we can see that in the examples. So that's important. And then the other piece is just noting the tall bars and the short bars. And this is kind of harder to explain because every day it's going to be different, and you kind of have to use your experience to understand like what is a significantly tall bar or a significantly short bar. And even when there's like a slightly short bar, it's still going to be very important. But again, it's really relative to like price action for that day. So this one's going to be a little bit harder, but you'll see generally what I mean with that. And then when you get more comfortable, you'll see it over time. Again, this is just like a primary, like first lesson. So I don't expect you guys to really understand these fully. It's going to take like about I don't know, maybe every day if you track it, you'll kind of see the nuances that I'm speaking to. So once you can identify those and you're kind of tracking them every 30 minutes to an hour, you want to basically ask yourself these questions. Is price approaching the 0 point or the flip point, or are we moving away from it, right? Because generally speaking, that 0 point or the flip point will move throughout the day, right? It's either going to be really far away from price or it'll be right where price opens. And then you can sort of track over time if price is moving away from it or towards it. And that generally gives you a sense of direction along with like the DDOI and some of the other exposures. Again, like is price approaching or repelling? And is the flip point itself or the 0 point itself moving throughout the day? Sometimes it moves pretty dramatically, other times it moves more subtly. And we'll see that in the examples. And again, like is price action telling us that we're coming to the 0 point? And what I mean by this is even with all of these tools, you should still have a pretty solid understanding of price action, meaning candles. Like, are they wicking? Is it a full body candle? Is it a doji? So you still kind of need to have an understanding of price action and what is that mapping out with respect to where Vanna flip points are and where Vanna 0 points are. Again, is the 0 point pushing the price forward? This is, again, kind of the same concept of repelling or attraction. Again, I think this will be a little bit clearer when we get into the examples. Now, this is just a chart from the option, whatever that book is. And what I want to highlight here is just the shape of the curve. So if you've taken calculus, you don't really need to know math, but it's basically like a sine wave or a cosine wave, right? It goes up, it crosses over, and it goes down. So when you look at your dashboards on the Vanna chart, you want to highlight this for yourself, visualize this. And I will show you that when we get to the examples. And like here is like basically your 0 point and also like your flip point. Okay, so we're going to get into these examples. The first one's going to be pretty simple. So this was Christmas Eve. So the first thing I look at is DDOI. Here we opened up at 85, right around here. So I don't trade the first 30 minutes unless it's like crystal clear. But, you know, just throughout my journey, I found that if I wait for 30 minutes and I let the data settle, I can read the Vanna pretty well, and I can read everything else pretty well, and it paints a better picture for me. So I have a higher risk to return trade after 30 minutes. You do you figure out what's best for you. A lot of people like the volatility of the first 30 minutes. So everything's very individual here. But here, so we opened here, and my screenshot here is at 10:26. So all these times are Eastern, by the way. So within like an hour, we're already at I think it was like, okay, we already get past like 6,000. But basically, when we open up and we're opening up here, what I'm looking for is there's a lot of green here. So this tells me we could have a pretty bullish day, right? We just don't want to kind of fall back lower or, you know, under 75, because once you do that, it kind of gets more choppy. But as long as we stay above where we opened, and again, like these price points, like 6,000, those are like psych levels. And you want to kind of pay attention to like 6,000, 650, kind of like these nice round numbers. So generally speaking, as long as we're trading in this range, we have a really good shot at hitting some of these higher bars, right? Like 20 and 35. We actually end up going higher. But the fact of the matter is your trade this is a high reward, low risk trade right here in this whole area, right? Just by mapping out DDOI. Now, you can't just use one exposure on its own. You do need the others to verify and give confluence. And that's where Vanna comes in, and then also like, DGEX and some of these others. So this is basically my board. I stopped looking at Charm. I don't find it as helpful. Maybe I'm not really understanding it well. So I've sort of, even though I have it on here, I'm not going to really focus on it. So this is 10:30, about an hour after we open. You see we're well above 6,000. And given where this DDOI chart is, this tells me that we've basically built a pretty good support at 6,000. We might come back to test 6,000, but this is a good support just from what everything looks like. We've got pretty big positive gamma here, primaries here, secondaries here. It looks like it's going to keep going up this way. You've got a lot. And the reason why I look at net gamma or net GEX is because on the DGEX, you don't really see the interest here. You kind of have to visualize that these bars are going to get bigger when you get here. But here it kind of gives you, okay, there's interest up here. I also like these really nice these kind of nice normal distribution curves, because it's like you're going to start here, you're going to go here, and then you're going to end here. This is like a very clean example of market data, market information. So here you see interest here, and obviously you have interest here. I mapped up the 20 and the 35, which maps back to your DDOI. And basically, yes, this is, speed, prices attracted to the tallest bars on speed. So obviously this is a tall bar and we're not there yet. And given everything looks pretty bullish, it's like, okay, cool, we could probably get there. Now you just need like a point of entry. And 35 is still a pretty big bar. So it's like, you know what, we could probably get there towards the end of the day. You have a pretty good shot at this. But you kind of have to get in position now, because you don't want to start trading like say here and then go for 35, because that's not a high risk. I mean, this is a higher risk, lower reward type of trade. But again, we're talking about Vanna. So how do we map Vanna into this? So let's zoom in here a little bit. So remember I said that you have to kind of map out the shape of the curve relative to, this graph up here. This graph, right? You want to find this shape on your board. So let's find it. Where are we? Okay, here we are. So it's here, right? Pretty simple, right? So this is what it maps out to. And you don't have to draw it out. Like obviously you can visualize it. And as we zoom in, let's start with like, where is the flip point? Where is the 0 point? So this looks like it's the lowest point, right? It's at 20. That also coincides with speed, kind of interest here, and then again, back to these big bars. So right here, you have a very high confluence trade. This is basically where I would just slap calls and kind of hold them. Even if they go red, I would hold it, because this is a pretty high confidence trade. Just like this is a very clean profile of Vanna. Again, Vanna doesn't always look like this, so we will get into a little bit more complicated examples, but this is a very easy read. The 0 point often is right next to the flip point, and what that tells you is this is kind of a resistance right here. So when we get to 20, we're going to have a little bit of trouble crossing this point. It doesn't mean we can't cross it. We actually do end up crossing it. But just by looking at this, you should be aware that once we approach 20, we're going to have a bit of a struggle getting over this. And usually when you have this, it's not big, but it's big relative to this bar, relative to that bar, relative to the bars around it. That's why I said you have to identify tall and short bars relative to the other bars around it. And because this is pretty big, it's going to get more likely than not stuck here. And it's going to take a little bit of back and forth before it can cross here. But now, since it is 10:30, I don't know if it's going to cross here. We have to see what it does at this point in time. But coming to 20, again, that's kind of your high probability trade. And this is what I mean by like a really tall bar. Like this is really, really tall. It is highly, highly unlikely we hit 50 today. And even if we had interest in 50 here, I think this is 40. This is 50. It's actually not that big of a bar, but this is pretty big. And you could have price get attracted here or even here. And on other days, I would say yes, you could maybe even hold for here. But seeing Vanna set up like this, highly unlikely just because of how big it is. The taller the bar, the harder it is for the price to move through it. The smaller bars are easier to move through, but because, and this is a small bar, but like I said, relative to the other bars, it's kind of big. So when it gets here, it's gonna have a little bit of a trouble. And these are all really big bars, so it's unlikely that we're gonna hit this area. And again, 6,000, like I said here, looks like it built support. And you can see that on Vanna as well. It built support because it is a pretty tall bar, right? But what you want to do is sort of track it and see if this remains in place. It might move around a little bit, like 5 points or maybe 10 points, but relatively, if it's still in this area, it's still a good trade idea. So let's move on. Now it's 11 a.m. Oh, and the reason why I pointed out 25 here is you see a little bit of red. I think this is probably a good area to short when we get here. Obviously, this is a pretty bullish setup. So if you do end up shorting, you just have to note the relative size of that short, and it's not going to be a deep pullback. At least right now, it doesn't seem like it. And I have a note here: wait for candles. Basically, you need to look for price action when you reach this area to see if there's going to be a good short opportunity or not. Okay, so let's keep going. Oh, the other thing to note on speed, like we opened on 85 and you can see like the interest on 85 is basically gone. Oh, the other thing is really important is the flip points on speed and net gamma. They basically, I think they almost always align if I'm not mistaken. And you want to, the flip point here also designates the direction of the day. If you're above the flip point and you're well into these, sort of tall bars, generally you're just going to kind of stay in this area. It's highly unlikely that you're going to cross over 85 and go into this area just from this profile. Okay, so we go a half hour later. Where are we now? You can see all these bars are a lot bigger. We basically are at 16, at 60, 17, almost at 20. So price moved pretty quickly. And this bar has gotten bigger. Again, I think, just by looking at this, we'll have a little bit of a short opportunity at 25. And again, it corresponds to how I was seeing 20 and this 25 bar be a bit of resistance. It, kind of validates itself here as well. So we come back here. 35 is now starting to look like, oh, this is getting a bit more interesting. Maybe we can get to 35 after all. We have plenty of time in the day. And then let's take a look at Vanna. And sure enough, the Vanna flip point has moved as, well, hasn't moved, hold on. Where's flip? This is 35, 30, so this is 25. Yeah, so it did move, right? So this is now 25, whereas here it was, oh no, it's about the same, but the bar is different. So you had a bit of a bigger bar here showing that it's a bit of a resistance, but as you approach it, it's not really resistance anymore, meaning we're going to probably cross into this area. You see how it kind of like levels off and makes the path a little bit clearer. And because the zero moved further out, price is being attracted into this direction. So if it's 11 o'clock, I'm going to probably look for a 35 or a 30 price area to, maybe take off my runners. Again, you're going to monitor price. Should this move out over here or over here, you could probably hold it longer. Again, this is, let's see, is this 50 still, 35, 40? Yeah, this is still 50. Highly unlikely we're going to cross 50 just by looking at it. So I have some questions. Let me just take a look at the questions. If I remember correctly, that day this the AOI was. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people look at SPY and they look at QQQ. The only two things I trade is SPX and ES. So I use futures as confluence as well. And with the futures data, it's mostly just mapping levels. And I use TPO charts to help sort of map out price action. So I don't really rely too much on SPY or QQQ. Again, there's only so much information you can focus on. So, and everybody has their own, excuse me, everybody has their own system. So if you have a system where you're mapping out SPY and QQQ, by all means, use it for confluence. Yeah, I'm about to 5% move on this. Sure. Looks pretty clean. Trending looks like green and red bars chop. What do you mean by looks like green and red bars equal chop? Because I actually don't see much chop in this at all. The only chop I would see is basically here, maybe a little bit here or here. But yeah, basically this is like solid green, not a whole lot of red. Again, this could be flipped the other way around where it's all sort of red and not a lot of green, which would be a trending, day to the downside. Equal distribution of both green and red. Yeah, obviously the more colors you have, it's going to be choppier. But again, I don't really pay too much attention to like, I guess, how should I say this? I don't get overly pedantic in the details. I mean, I do get pedantic in some of the details, like, okay, where is the highest bar? Where is the 0 point? Like laser focused on very specific points like that. But then generally speaking, like, is there even distribution of red and green? I mean, I don't know. Maybe because there are chop days when it's all predominantly green, right? And it's because, you could have a couple of different flip points. You may not have a clear read on Vanna. You may not have, like, this is at 10 billion before it was 5 billion. This may be like 1 or 2 billion, right? So those are other data points that tell you that, oh, there might just be more chop than trend. So let me see what else. Looks pretty clean trending. So positive Vanna bar is likely that we move through that area to the flip point. So I don't care too much if it's a positive bar or a negative bar. I just care about the shape. I care about where the flip points are and where the 0 point are. I don't care if it's up or down, right? I just care if it's tall, short, and 0. And these could be, I mean, I know some people maybe use Vanna on split or something else. As you can see, this is just one color. I don't want to be confused by colors. I keep it simple. It's those three things. Is it a short bar? Is it a tall bar? Is it a 0 point? Is it a flip point? And how are those things moving throughout the day? Is price moving towards it? Or is price moving away from it? Because you could have instances where, like, say this is the start of the day, and this 0 point we never touch, right? And 0 point just like kind of moves here, 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 and price actually starts moving into these tall bars. This is what I mean by where Vanna will push the price into the bars. But again, you're going to stop at like one of these taller bars. And even like say if this is an instance where Vanna is pushing it in, you might just end up over here, right? Like even though this is a bit of resistance, this will come and become a little bit smaller, allowing the path to clear into here. That's where it gets a little bit more complicated. But what I'm showing is like a super simple example of how price is being attracted to 0 and to the flip versus being repelled from it. I know there's charts that have been floating around, like if the bar is positive and IV is dropping or increasing, it's attraction or repellent. I find all of that very, very confusing. I need it to be pretty intuitive. And if I can't read this in an intuitive manner, then I kind of need to, I don't know, maybe not use it or just, I just have to understand data intuitively. So I don't want to use information that makes me confused. But again, it might be helpful for somebody else. Um, so the volatility size of the bar determines the calls. So the validity of the size of the bar on Vanna determines if calls really hold or not. Yeah, so the size of the bar will tell me to hold it or be cautious. So again, here, when I see this, I'm a little bit cautious, right? As we approach 20, and I know that this is a 0 point, it could be that, market makers at this point in time may need to rebalance. So may like hover around 20. We go back a little bit and then we come back and break through, right? But as you come into this area, this bar started to look like this, right? We still haven't crossed it. But since it's smaller, I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't need to be so worried. Again, you could always take some off to be precautionary, but it kind of looks like since the 0 point moved out, I'm pretty good to hold it. And now if you're okay with a little bit of a drawdown, but again, if you got in here, you're fine. But if you got in, say, around here and you're okay with a bit of a drawdown, then you can still take the trade. And again, like the other confluence points I have is this. Like this is a pretty clear picture. You don't get a lot of days like this where it's pretty clear. And when you do, you kind of just have to recognize it and just not overcomplicate it or overthink it. So where are we? Are we here? And this is, obviously how price is trending. Let me see some of these other questions. Would a good point target then watch for PA to flip? I like the likelihood of the reversal would be high, but again, just watching PA. Thank you, bro. Okay, better to be safe than sorry. Yeah, better to be safe than sorry. Again, like I think like on a day like this, if and it all depends on like where you are in your trading journey. If you're building your account, listen, you just want to take it off at 20. Take it all off at 20 because if you're building your account and you're trying to get base hits in, don't even try to go for the runners because you're not there, right? I think that's more of advanced trading, to be quite honest. But I think a lot of people want to be like, oh, I want to get whatever those 500% plays. And look, that's all great, but it's not really going to help you in the long run because you kind of have to understand the basics. And there's always these subtleties of like, when do you take the trade off? When do you leave a runner? Um, and sometimes you don't have the luxury of leaving a runner, right? Especially when you're trying to build your account. So if you're building your account and you still have the luxury of leaving a runner, then yes, you can. But again, I really advise people if they're building their accounts, just take it off. You're taking the safe trade. And then you want to come back the next day and trade again. You don't want to overtrade. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So, but I'm just kind of walking you through the whole picture just so that you kind of can manage this for yourself. I thought about gamma flow through showing primary, secondary below. What did that lean towards? The pullback or the muted because the other points lean up instead? Well, okay, so I'm not sure what you mean by that because here's primary and here's secondary. So the secondary pulls the price generally above the primary. And you see primary holding pretty steady. So it's about 11 o'clock, right? And again, like 6,000 looked like it built a pretty strong base even from here, seeing how big it is. And then seeing here that we kind of came out of this territory. And we're kind of like now in this territory, meaning like it kind of looks like this is a pretty good base here, right? So I'm like, I just don't really see it falling below 6,000. Maybe it'll touch here or here, but it's not going to like really, fall or change trend. So meaning the trend is still in place. And again, like this is just the market kind of working itself out, but the trend is still in place, right? And you have this is again, Vanna is a pretty strong indicator. I actually think it's stronger than some of these other indicators. The problem with it is if you only look at Vanna, you will miss subtleties. in price action, and I will show you that later. So you still need the confluence of, DDOI and some, kind of the other things I'm showing here. Okay. I'm just reading this question. I think if primary secondary, we will look at a couple of other direct examples, and maybe this will be more clear, Monk, because I am getting a little bit lost in the details here, but I do want to address your question. So maybe Monk, we can come back to your point. Because again, I'm showing like a really easy example, and there are more difficult examples to come. If a day shows an equal distribution in both, okay, I read that. If you don't view positive bars as support and negative bars. Yeah, I don't really use, so again, when I look at Vanna, I'm not looking at, oh, this is a positive or negative. I'm looking at price action. Is price moving towards that bar? Is price moving away from that bar? Is price moving towards a really tall bar? Or is price moving towards the 0 point? Or is price moving towards the flip point? Is price crossing that flip point? Again, crossing that flip point, whether it's a Vanna flip point or a flip point on net gamma or speed gamma, it's really a big deal because it changes the structure of the day. These flip points, I don't know how, there's probably a better way to explain it, and maybe Geo has some like fundamentals to it. I'm just literally going by visuals and what I've observed with price action. It changes the picture when you flip into the other side. Now, whether you hold the other side remains to be seen, right? But when you flip and you do hold the other side, then the board really significantly changes. So like say for example, we flip here, we get to 50 and we end up crossing 50, you are bullish as fuck, right? I would consider the next day to be bullish and the next few days to be bullish, right? Like it changes the tone dramatically. And it also depends on like where you end up closing that day. Because oftentimes price will come back and close like somewhere here, which sort of negates the move. So hopefully that answers the question of positive or negative. It's just how is price moving and where are the bars, right? And I do use VIX. I actually even trade the VIX often. I like to see pretty significant changes in the VIX. I think just to focus on VIX and Vanna is almost like a separate class, to be quite honest. It's like this is 101. That might be like 102 because you can obviously look at other areas. So let's see. So is a full point, 0 point the magnet? Yeah, it's often the magnet, but again, I did say that at times if price can be repelled from it, it's unusual, but it does happen. And those are some of the more trickier days to recognize that price is gradually moving away from it. And the only way you would see that is, again, by sort of jotting it down on paper or taking screenshots and, throwing it into this dashboard. And you will see, well, you know what, we're not really moving into the price 0 point or the flip point. We're kind of moving away from it and into kind of these taller bars. I think I have an example of that. I don't know. I don't know if I do, but I may have to record that to be able to illustrate it. Okay, got it. Thanks. You pay attention to whether the delta of the Vanna. No, I'm just looking at the size. So again, like I am pretty pedantic in terms of like very detailed of where precisely the 0 point is. I don't care how much it is because you could just look at it. It's like, okay, this is bigger than this. This is bigger than that, right? I mean, sometimes sometimes these become so small, you might need to hover on it to actually get the reading. But I'm not really paying too much attention to that. Okay, so hopefully that answers a lot of questions. So let's keep going and see what happens to Vanna. Again, we get a really nice distribution, super simple. Remember I was saying 20 is going to be a bit of resistance just because we saw that early on. And so you do see some like back and forth here happening at 20. Let me just look at, yeah, and when you get to price action, this is SPX at a what do you call it? 3-minute candles. This is what I use. I'm not really sure what other people use, but this works for me. This is what I've trained my eyes to see over time. So I'm very, very familiar with like candles, the range. And you can see as we're approaching 20, we are kind of getting into muted territory, right? Which is kind of what we anticipated. And so from the board, what do we see? You see that red here at 25. Earlier in the day, it was at 20. Oh no, sorry, it was still at 25. Yeah, still at 20, and this was a flip point, and this was the slightly taller bar at 25. So knowing we would get into a bit of struggle here, which is exactly what we see. And then let's look at Vanna now. So we're getting into 20, and into the 25 area. But you see how it's kind of like not big anymore. It kind of has died out, so to speak. Not really much of an issue. It doesn't mean we might not have a bit of a slowdown in price. You could still back test here, and you see the flip point is here. So you might have a little bit of a struggle, but because these bars are kind of clearing out, it's a pretty good indication that you can come into this area as well. But again, if you're building your account, you should probably start taking off positions here because a little bit of unpredictability, and we are 11:30, so you do have a pretty good amount of time left to make the rest of the journey. I guess I don't have. I think basically what happened was we basically just fell into this area. I don't want to dwell so much on this example just because it was super easy. This is just price action throughout the day. So when we did get to 20, which is here, you can see we hovered at 20 for like, I guess about an hour, 11:45 to 11:30. So about 45 minutes, we hovered at 20. And you saw that from early on, you were going to get into a bit of trouble, like a little bit of stalling or back and forth. We actually get into a little bit of a short here at 25, but as I was noting before, because it is a pretty bullish day, the short is going to be pretty shallow. And then at this point, you're kind of just holding to like the 35 area. And as price moves up, you're just going to take it off because when you get into here, it becomes pretty unpredictable. I don't have the rest of the screenshots, but here it's kind of like you're trying to catch the meat of the move. Here, you're just kind of like not winging it, but this is like the icing on the cake, right? If you're base building your account, don't even worry about this. You can observe it. I would advise not to trade it because you don't want to lose what you just built up from here, right? You're trying to get the basics. You're trying to get these basic trades down, these high reward, low risk trades. You want to get as much of this possible so that you do have the opportunity to kind of get the icing on the cake when the opportunity arises. Okay. I like the way you teach, Risha. Do you have a class on? I mean, I can do GEX. The reason why I focus on Vanna because there was a lot of questions in the main chat about Vanna. And so I was like, okay, let me just put a class together. I think the other exposures are easier to read. And we can, do a separate class on those. But I want to sort of stay focused here so that really hone in on Vanna and that you guys come away with like a pretty robust understanding of it. Okay, so let's do another example. This example, now we're going to get into a little bit more challenging examples. I'm just going to take a drink. Hold on. The reason why some of these examples are going to be a bit more challenging is because the market dynamics right now are more challenging. We have sort of moved away from the first half or the first, I would say, 8 months of 2024, which is a pretty much a trending market. And we've gone into, the election was also gave us an ability to have like a trending market, but post-election, we're kind of like into this chop zone. I think we're seeing the beginning of a stage where the market is trying to figure out like, are we going to enter into a bear market? 6 months from now, right? So it's kind of like this macro shift that's happening. So you're going to see a lot more trickier situations and trickier examples for Vanna. You're going to have a less trending market is what I'm seeing at the moment. Not that you can't have trend days, but I think like back-to-back trend days, I don't see that right now. So, all right, so let's get into this day. This was 12/17. I'm trying to think where, okay, where did we open? We opened at 60.55. Okay, this was the um, this is the DDOI. So I think this is when DAF posted it. This is pre-market. So we opened at 55, which is, okay, let's go here. We opened here. So for opening here, again, I don't trade the first 30 minutes. Like, I don't know what we're gonna do, right? Like this is not really giving me much of a direction. If we come into here, it looks like we're probably gonna have a bearish day. If we start trading this area, this is a kind of a hot mess. This is a lot of back and forth. This is not directional. So you're getting to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more cautious. And yeah, we just have to see what's going to play out. I marked out the big areas. This could be the low target. If we do get like a trending market down and a Vanna sort of gives us this target, we can look to, take a short here. But right now I'm kind of like confused. I don't really know what's going to happen. So let's look at the board. This is 10:10, about 40 minutes in. So again, it's already choppy to begin with. We open up around like 50, we back test 55, we're now at 41. So the two big, DGEX is still a pretty important indicator. So the biggest bar right now is at 650, the secondary is 640. So price is gonna, looking at this distribution here, it's kind of like this, right? With a lot of negativity. So I mean, does this day look bullish to anybody? I guess is the question I would ask. Like, feel free to respond in chat. Like if you open up the board and you look at this, what is your assessment? Like, does anybody think that this is bullish? And if so, please tell me why. Okay, good. So at least like you have one direction. Like, you have an overall direction. Now you don't know where you're going to enter. You don't know how steep the trade is going to be or how deep the pullback is going to be. That we don't know yet, and that's to be figured out. But the fact that you have a bar right in the middle means we can trade here, right? As of 10:10, we can trade here, and then we can trade this territory as well, right? You kind of have a similar situation here, right? With more emphasis here, right? So you kind of have a bit of a skew this way, right? Even though we may do a little bit back and forth, we're still kind of pulling in this direction. Now here, Vanna is not so easy to read just because we've got a couple of, it's not like clean, right? Like it's not like a clean slate here. You got this bar at 30, you've got another attraction here at 40. And then like obviously we're not going to get into this territory, right? Like this is like, because we're not bullish, we're not going to be looking at any of these strikes. We're going to be looking basically like if we get to 40, because it is a bar that kind of sticks out relative to these, you may get stuck at 40, which means you may want to take a short at 40 if it gets to 40. But the fact that we traded in the 50s tells me we can hit these bars as well, right? Just because they are kind of the same size, right? Like say if it was like a really strong bearish day and you had like a clearer picture on DDOI, I would look at 40 here and say, oh, I could probably short for 40 into this region. But because a lot of the concentration is still here, it doesn't give me a high confidence short. It just tells me there's a bit of confusion here. for this to be ultra bearish, you see the flip point here? And I said, flip points really change the board. I want to see it under, this is 30. I want it to see it trade under and hold under 30. And this way, it's a much higher probability of like a strong bear trend, right? Um, and 30 is pretty far. I mean, not too far, but you want to come here and this would be a test and you want to keep going. And if you can break below 30 into this area and the board starts shifting this way and the 0 point starts shifting this way, then you can take a trade in this area. That would be, a short. But right now we don't have anything like that. We don't really know what's happening. So let's take a look at speed. Where's price attracted? It's attracted to 40. It's attracted to 30. Your flip point over here is like, what is it, 60, 60, like 70, right? So kind of a big range to trade. I like say if price was here during the opening of the day, it'd be easier to read it like, because then you can kind of just wait, like, are we going to flip over or are we just going to keep repelling the 70 area? Because if we keep repelling the 70 area, then we can kind of take a short into this direction, right? What is it when you enter the break of 30? This is more price action related. So 30 is a level, right? So I've mapped out here. 30 is a level from here, right? It's a flip point. It's also a pretty kind of a big bar relative to like these bars. It's like a point of interest, right? So is 35. Like I feel like we're gonna get to 35 and stop or kind of rest. And then if we get to 30 and if price action, this is where like, I read 3-minute candles. So I can see like if we have a pretty strong kill candle that comes in and breaks this level, and then we have another one here, or if we have another one like this, and like this is telling me we're, kind of coming below. Like something like this tells me we're breaking 30. This is more price action. And again, the kill candles can come in a different shape or format. But this is just, I'm just you're setting the sentiment for the day. Like, what is the picture telling you? Like, you can't be overly, we determine it's definitely not bullish. But is it a strong bear trend? At the moment, no, just because you've got this even distribution and you've got a pretty strong pull here, which is 50, right? And then you've got all this interest here, even though it's negative. This is where I think like if you read VIX and I'm not going to touch on that because I think it's going to confuse you and it kind of goes into a different sort of tangential lesson. But the fact that you have interest here, it's kind of like, well, we could pull into these bars. So I kind of need to wait and see what's happening. Right now, I'm just mapping out levels and areas of interest. We've got 30, we've got, well, we're already at 40, but we've got 30 and 25 mapped out just because of this area here. And your 0 point is actually here, right? So you want to just sort of note that. But I don't really have a trade idea here. So I'm going to wait. And remember I said like usually it's an hour increment or 30-minute increments where you want to note the changes so that you could get a better idea. So let's move forward. Nothing to really see here. Unless like we just fall through and kind of break 30, then this whole dashboard will change and it will give you a better indication of price. So we do end up trading from, hold on, what's happening here? Oh, okay. So this is, what, 30 minutes later? Yeah, 30 minutes later, price traded down into 35 and then came right back to 40, right? Which kind of was saying there's interest here, there's interest here. It's confusing. I don't know where it's really going. I don't have a high probability trade. So I'm just watching. So fine, price got to 35 and then it came right back. So again, it's just kind of going into this it's continuing with sort of this back and forth. And you see these, primary, secondary moving up and down. Again, confusion, not a pure directional trade. Either way, you want to wait for this to kind of set up. There's no setup, right? You can trade it, fine, but this is not a high probability setup. But you still have 30 as interest, you still have 50 as interest. Now, because 50 is still a pretty big interest, you could, sort of take a mean reversion back to 50. It's kind of not my best trade idea. But Vanna really doesn't tell me to trade this back to 50. So I'm not going to take it. Your flip point is like, there's no good read here. So we're just going to keep going and see what happens at 11. Okay, so here we have a little bit more information. So we have a lot more negative delta than we had before, right? And it's tighter, right? Like all of this positive is kind of gone. Meaning, I mean, it's not like really, really gone, but you see how it just kind of like is tighter versus this, and even where we were from the beginning. That tells me there is more direction forming. It's still not super clear if we're just going to trade into this or if we're going to find a point of resistance here. Now, we did start off the day saying this is not bullish. So at the end of the day, we're looking for a short. We're trying to identify a short from the board. Okay. And we're still at, this is still 50 though, right? Yeah, this is still 50. So your 50 is still kind of like your midpoint. Right here. Yeah, 50. We're just trading around it. Again, 70, 75 is our flip point. You'd have to dramatically change the board at 70, 75, which is over here. Highly unlikely we're going to get here just from looking at DDOI. DDOI showed nothing that it would, bring price all the way up here. So even though price is going to trade up here, it's going to reject somewhere here, right? And you're going to have a short opportunity. How deep is this short? I don't know. Right now, it's not really telling me much until I cross 30. And here you do have a bit of a change. This this is sort of shifting, right? Let me see what's shifting here. I think it's just like getting more concentrated. Actually, I don't know why I put that. Anyway, let's go back to Vanna. All right, so Vanna has drastically changed now from where it was this morning, right? Let's just take a look at the morning, a reminder, confusing. Again, it's early. Market needs to figure itself out, sort itself out. So now we're about an hour later. And again, hour later changes are the most dramatic. And now you can see, okay, we've got a couple of flip points, right? Here's a flip point here at 50. And then you get a flip point here at 35. When you have multiple flip points, the market is confused, right? You also have a flip point here. So let's just hang tight. Let's see if this can sort itself out. But 25 is becoming an area of interest, meaning you see how this is all like small bars here? And we are sort of bearish leaning for the day. You want to find somehow a rejection point or a resistance point somewhere in this area and trade it here. Why? Because again, this is kind of cleaned up. This looks like it's going to stop at 25 or above 25. It looks like it's unlikely to cross 25, even though you have all these like low points here, and this could, look like a 0 point at some point in the day. As long as this is a tall bar relative to the bars around it, it's going to be harder to cross. And then maybe like looking at price, maybe price needs to get to like, I don't know, 60 for a rejection. I really don't know, or maybe even 55 for a rejection. And then you can start taking a short. This is still pretty confusing though, but you have a better idea of like kind of where we're shifting to. Okay, so let's see if we have a clear indication 12 minutes later, or actually just like 5 or 6 minutes later. And I think Vanna did clear up a bit here. Yeah, Vanna kind of clears up if you can see, like you had these bars here. These bars are no longer here, right? It kind of cleared up. And that's kind of what you want to wait for. So now you have a better picture, right? We were still looking for like price to kind of trade into this area and reject to take a short. This 50 is a little bit of a block. So even if we, come into this area, reject, we could get stuck at 50 and maybe trade back and forth here. But generally speaking, this tells me we're going to come into this area at some point in the day. And we're not going to go across this from what it looks like, right? Again, concentration is here, concentration is here, 40 speed, 30 speed. Even though this is concentrated here, this looks like more rejection area and coming back into here. The reason why DGEX can be a bit tricky is because you kind of have to visualize this shifting here, and you need kind of these tools to help you see that, right? And then again here, this is, what is, I guess this is 40, 30. Yeah, this is like 25, right? So it kind of lines up with this 25. Okay, and where is price? Price is up as 55. So I'm gonna at this point look for price action. So for like candles, the kind of like red candles to come in, start trading below, like looking like it's gonna die out and probably enter somewhere here to take it short anywhere in this area, right? Basically under 50, which I know is not like a big trading zone. But if we can cross 50, we're going to get into a little bit of trouble at 50 here just because of you see this bar. But if we can cross that, you can come here. And if this is 25, this would be 30. So, okay, let's target 30 for now, right? That's like, so these would be like your scale up points. Now, you might not even get a trade entry here just because it might, you just don't know what kind of candles you're going to get here. So your trade entry might be here, but you kind of see the range that I'm playing with, right? Here's a range, and then here. Okay, I can't draw. Okay, anyway, you get the point. All right, let's go. Okay, so now we're an hour later. Again, like sometimes moving through even like a small bar like this, it is pretty big relative to this, and it could take an hour to kind of move through it or reject it or whatever. All right, hour later. Now look at 50. Beautiful. Teeny tiny, and it's our flip. Let's flip back in here so that we can get our short in, right? Look at these bars. So you still have multiple flip points. Like this is like, let's zoom in. This is still a flip point here too. This is a flip point. Again, it's just kind of like what we identified earlier on, multiple flip points, but at least now it's a clearer picture, right? Hopefully you can see it's a much clearer picture than what we were dealing with at the open. Again, I feel like this is more confident. I'm more confident in the short now. I'm more confident in my entry. I'm confident in the range, right? I have room to play with. And your flip point here moves down, which is like great. I love that. We were at 75, we were like 70, 75. Cool, we're moving down. Even though price moved up, this flip point moved down. We like it. This is getting concentrated. When price gets concentrated, it's getting ready for a bit of expansion. And like here's like the territory you want to expand into. So you like when Vanna looks like thin because price has, yes, precisely. So, and that's why you're tracking, like at the beginning of the day or beginning of this lesson, I said you want to track the flip points, you want to track the 0 points, and you want to track where are the tall bars, where like the kind of short bars near and around the 0 points. So when this clears out, I'm like, oh, cool. Now I have a trade idea. I did have to wait till noon to kind of get to this point, but when you start out in a bit of a choppy market, that's kind of the name of the game. So let's see where price is. So let's just look at where price was before. It was trading at 55, and I was like, well, I kind of have to figure out where it's rejecting here. So we were trading at 55, we go back above 50. Like say you had taken a short immediately, you may have gotten stopped out, maybe not. but you see it's still choppy. It seems like if we cross 50, that might be the cleaner short, but you could start taking an entry around here as long as you set some bit of a wider stop, just because it still is choppy, right? You just have to kind of respect the nature of the day, the environment that you're in. All right. So we're now at 12. So an hour later, this is a very, very slow day. We've got more concentration in Gex. This is nice. It means we're finally figuring out a direction, right? We went from this hot mess to where are we? Here, pretty concentrated. And again, we started the day with a bearish tone, but recognizing that there was chop. And now that we're getting concentrated, we're like, okay, we could probably get our short opportunity. And you can see from price action, yeah, it's starting to weaken, right? It doesn't seem like we want to cross over here, which is like the 660 area. And this is cleared up. Look at that. Pretty clear. Here's our 0 point. Where are we? We're at 50. We're gonna get to 55. Here's a flip. So where are we? 50, 55. No, sorry, 50, counting down. 50, 45, 40, and then 35, right? 35 and 40 are the flip zones. If we can flip 35, we'll hit these two areas. This is your 25, unlikely to cross over. And again, with every zone, it's going to be plus or minus 5. So if you think like 25 is the lowest point, then you probably want to target like 30, right? And call it a day. Because this is a choppy market. So yeah, we got to cross this 35 though to get to 30, right? But we're basically telling me we're going to hit 40 at this point, right? So let's keep going. And you see it's getting choppy. It's trying to figure out what the hell it wants to do. So now we're getting into 2 p.m. And again, like if you are familiar with times, like the market likes to move at 11:30 because 11:30 is, wait, let me just backtrack. The market likes to move at 10 a.m. roughly because after the first 30 minutes, you've got all your market on open orders clearing, right? Like all of the overseas orders have come through. Anybody that needs to position, they've positioned. Anything they need to balance, they've balanced. And at 10 a.m., market can start figuring out a direction. So that's 10 a.m. And then the next point of reference is 11:30. 11:30 is when the European market closes. So you get a bit of direction there. And then at like lately I've noticed at noon, 12:30, there's been a shift in markets. So I'm starting to track 12:30, but then I always track 2 p.m. It seems to want to move at 2 p.m. It moves at like, whether it's 2 p.m. or 2:30 around there, or 3 or 3:30. These are just important timestamps that you should be actively looking at the market. So now we're getting into 2 p.m. It's like, okay, look, can we finally get this move, right? We're getting into the time. Now the time in the day is aligning with the board. And again, we have this, it's kind of the same information. We're just kind of moving through this area at this point. And you want to move through this flip point, which is, I guess now at 35.40, yeah. And from here, it's basically hands off from here because I've done my analysis. I've done my work throughout the day. I've mapped it out. It's playing out as I, theorized from the beginning of the day. I feel pretty comfortable with the trade. And look, we've been negative the whole day. We're still negative. We were corrected at the chop. Now let's just get this guy to come down here and maybe a little bit more. Again, we don't know the range, but we have an idea of where we want to take the trade. And I like it when it kind of, I guess you call it a flat top, right? Because it's getting ready for it to move. And again, it's like 10 minutes late or 20 minutes later. Your flip point is moving down. Nice. it means, the market's moving in this direction. Not much has changed. This 50 is now becoming a barrier. You're not likely to trade back into 50, even though we traded 50 a few times. Where's 50? Oh, 50 is here. It's actually pretty close. Maybe we could touch it again, but it kind of seems like we're not going to get there anymore because we've moved far enough from it and it's kind of building like a bigger bar here. That shows me that it's like maybe not as much interest. And again, it's like back. If we trade back into 50, we get into chop territory and that kind of messes up the whole trade. So let's not get there. Like, I don't know, we could get there, but hopefully we don't. And then again, our flip points are moving down. This is now about 10 or 20 minutes later. Okay, we keep going in the direction that we thought. Your 0 point is now at 35. This is great. This is the confluence you like to see. Now we're going to target 35. We should take some off at 35 because we can start to get stuck around this area. Let's see what else. 40, again, 35 point of attraction. This is now becoming an area of interest. But because these two bars are pretty tall, it tells me it may take some time until we get into this area because we kind of have to work out all the positions here. Once flip point is confirmed, the price is under this validates once used support during resistance, then price should continue. Yeah. Basically, you started off with a thesis of a bearish thesis, but you kind of needed the board to clean up in a directional move. And throughout the day, we've observed this price point, this flip point moving down. It is highly unlikely to change just because we've built this momentum and we started the day with a bearish tone, right? All of that happened in the first like couple of hours is, a lot of the times I don't know what the day was before this, but it could have been a pretty drastic move. Wait, actually, do I have it? I don't have it, but it might have been like a pretty big move, which means that, market makers and, fund managers just need a little bit more time to balance out their positions before they can, put on the next trades. And okay, so now we're approaching 3 o'clock. Have we hit what do we say we want to target? We want to target 35, right? Target 35 for your base hits, and then, fine, take it to like 30, maybe 25 for your runners. But if you want to play it cautiously, just take your money off at 35, or maybe a little bit lower than 35. 30 to 35, I would say, take off your trades. We're at 3 o'clock. Okay, so again, 40 to 45, 40 to 45 is our, again, I said that these bars are pretty tall, so they're going to get stuck here, but you're still going to target this area, okay? That plan has not changed because nothing has changed on the board. This is still your 35. 30 to 35 is still your target here, right? You're kind of stuck at 40. You see how the bar is a little bit bigger than where I think it was before. Yeah, it's kind of a little bit bigger. That just means it's stuck, right? It has to trade a little bit back and forth before it can come into here. You still have about an hour left. So I would start putting in like taking off here. Again, maybe you could get to 30. You just don't know, but I'm going to start taking off somewhere around this area. All right, let's just see where we go. Okay, this was at 2:58. We're now at 3:28, so about a half hour later. You see how long it's taking to kind of break through these big areas. And now Vanna's pretty concentrated. It means like we're kind of coming to the culmination of the day, right? Again, here's your 0 points. When it comes into this area, take off the trade. So we're at 35. You can, take it off at this point and just lock it in and be done. So at 3:41, yeah, so we actually do end up coming back into this area to trade. Again, the market was a bit choppy, but I think we do end up trading 30 if I'm not correct. No, we actually don't. We don't trade. Okay, yeah, we literally stopped at 35. That's why you want to be extra cautious. And like while the first example, we did have, that bigger move at the end of the day, you're not guaranteed of that bigger move. But if I were trading this, I still would have targeted 30. And I would have, you know, gotten stopped out on like a stop loss in profit. I would have taken off at 35. I still would have let runners for 30. Um, just because sometimes you do get there. But in this case, we didn't. So you just want to make sure you have a stop. And because here it's still kind of this is at 3 o'clock. It still kind of looks like it could get to this is 25. It still looks like it could get to 30. It just didn't because it was a flip point. And it just wasn't gonna cross over. Right. You kind of got stuck at 40. Let me see what Vanna looks like. Um yeah, it's kind of the same picture, And where do I have a picture at the end of the day? Okay. Yeah. You would want like this bar to decrease for it to trade into this price point. Like if you're looking for like an end of day trade, just to touch it, but then it'll come back here just because it is smaller here. Um, and I think it does. Oh, it does get there. Oh, wait, this is 40, this is 45. So say if you, I don't know, I'm not taking this trade, but I'm just sort of illustrating how Vanna works. This is a pretty big bar. You want this to decrease. And as it decreases, your price can trade back into it. So this is at 43. So if that bar decreases, we can hit 45 and we end up hitting 48. Again, I'm not trading this. And you can see how like the Vanna flip point, and sorry, the net gamma actually moved up. It moved up to 50 to 55. That's just to illustrate how Vanna works. Okay, I'm not trading that, like I said. Um, hopefully that gives you a pretty good indication. We are at just over an hour. It's hour and 15. I want to show a live example. So why don't we just do that and then maybe we can call it there. So let me see if there's any questions. Once upon yeah. Do the DDOI bars all being similar size give you a sense that we're going to have trouble? Yes, exactly. Let's go back and just review DDOI. Like the only clear target I have here is this, but because these are all like kind of similar in size, it's like I don't know what it's gonna do, right? Like this is just not clear. You kind of have this, oh shoot. You kind of have like this gap here. This did coincide with some of those flip points. And as I was saying, like if you manage to cross one of these flip points, it dramatically changes the direction and the sentiment for the day, right? And it could just be a test. You could always test and reject, which also gives you a pretty big information, or it's pretty pertinent for directional moves. But because you're coming into like this valley point, it's like, what do we want to do? Like, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to cross over into here? Like if we had opened here and then we back test this, that's pretty bullish, right? And when you stay away from this whole area, oh, sorry, that's not it. You stay away from this whole area and never touch it once. That gives you more of a bias towards a bullish day, right? But we didn't do any of that. Where did we open again? We opened at like, yeah, we opened at like 50, 55 or 60. We just opened at this mess of an area. Um, yeah, okay, so that's DDOI. And then again, like this DDOI was like super clear. Like as long as we don't come into any of this territory, you're good to go. And I don't think we ever got lower than the opening, which was what is this? Wait, no, sorry, here. Like 80. Oh, and also gaps are really important. Usually when you get a gap, it's gap and go. But because we are more in a choppy market now, versus the trending market, your gap and goes can be rejected because it's not really a trending market. Not right now. Again, it could change. But yeah, gaps are important. Gap and goes are nice indicators as well. Yeah, this is your gap. I don't think we had a gap. Oh, here we did have a gap. So here's where this should be a gap and go down. Honestly, this should have been much more of a bearish trend down. But for some reason, price kind of stalled. I don't know if we went up the next day, but this would probably make me think that we might want to test back here. Oh yeah. Okay. So let me do some. So it's all nice to look at static examples, but let's try to look at a live example and hopefully we get through this in like 10 minutes. All right, so this is okay. 1219. Basically when I look at this, I guess we opened up around here. What is the time? I think this is yeah, this is like midnight. Um okay, wait, I have the chart here. We open, where did we open? Like I guess like 10 or 15. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay, that's a oh, thanks for noting that 1217. That makes more sense. Why we didn't do move much. Okay, so here is the 20. It's like, okay, so we probably opened around like 15. So this is your DDOI. So for opening around 15, this is 09. This is like 10. I guess this is 15, like this area. So when I look at something like this is obviously a much clearer picture than the example below. If we are above here, I'm gonna be more bullish, but there's gonna be chop, right? If we were like opening here, I'm like, okay, this is good to go. We're pretty much green, right? Kind of like the first example I went over. But because we're opening here, I'm like, oh shit, this might be a wall, right? I don't know if we're gonna cross over this bad boy. It's really big. So I'm probably gonna look for trades in this area. Like this is a pretty decent target. This is a target. This is a target. This would be like a crazy ultimate target if we ever got down here. Sometimes you can. It's hard to imagine we would get all the way there, but I guess like here are your areas of interest for me personally. So again, we're opening here. I wait for the first 30 minutes. Do we trade up to here? Do we cross over? I don't know. Let's figure out what it does in the first 30 minutes. And as long as we can hang around in this area, we're good to go. If we can get pretty strong kill candles under 5,900, that's going to give me even more confidence to trade it this way or trade from like this point to this point, which would be, I don't know what strike this is. I can't count. Oh, 50, 60, 70, 75. Let me just make sure I count it right. 60, 60, 70, yeah, 75. So maybe you want to go like 5,900 to 75 as your short. I don't know. This is just an initial idea. We have to look at what the dashboard says. All right, so let's look at the screen recording. Let's go. Hopefully this is making sense. Yes, no, just give me a heads up in the chat. Okay, so what did I say? Let's target under 5,900 to get a short, right? So under 5,900 sounded like a great idea when we looked at DDOI. But I guess, can someone tell me what are some of the precautionary data points that you see here in terms of taking 5,900 and into this area? What is it that you see that either gives you high confidence of this trade or low confidence of this trade? So feel free to either unmute or type into chat. Interest at 520. Okay, anybody else? And no cheating. Don't look up the day. I don't even know what date this is. What is, I don't know the date. I think I noted it earlier, but okay, anybody else? Anybody else has any, same for speed? Yep. You've got interest at, you mean interest at 20 on speed? Yep. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's really important. What about Vanna? What does Vanna tell you? And what do you mean by wall? Which wall? Can you be more precise? 5,900 large spot on Vanna. Okay. That's, is that your wall? Is Vanna exhausted? All interest in Vanna is above. Okay, if the interest is above, do you think we're going to move above Vanna or are we going to move below Vanna? Okay. Yeah. This is exactly what you got, what I wanted you guys to notice. So 5,200, yeah, 5,500, sorry, Jesus, 0, 0, and 20 are really strong points of interest. Yes, you see it here, here, here. Now, what else do you see about Vanna here? Remember, I said you have to mark the tall bars and kind of the short bars, but what are the other bars or areas that we're going to be marking? By the way, this is about like 40 minutes into the open. Several flip points below 5,900. Nice. Where do you see your 0 points? Yeah, mostly to the left, right? You do have a flip here, but your 0 is pretty much here. Yep, great. Nice job. All right, and remember, let me just, how do I, hold on, I'm gonna pause. Where's this video? Okay, how do I make it small? Pardon. Okay, hold on. Okay, so you're reading correctly the everything you guys are saying is spot on. Now, what did I say about this? When we look at this, maybe I need to erase some of this. Hold on. Where's that erase? But when you look at DDOI and where we opened, what do we want to say about this? Type in chat, please. Are we bearish, bullish? Like what are your, I guess, theories for the day when we look at DDOI? Because what you want to do is match your theories from DDOI to what you all just said about the dashboard. Yeah, so 25 could be a wall, but below choppy until 5,900 and 70 and 75. More interest above. What do you mean by that? So, well, okay, I don't know what you mean by price because this was taken a spot. This was taken at midnight, so disregard this little bar. Imagine the bar is here and we're at open because this is where we open around this area. So are you saying, Hassan, that interest is above or below this? Like, are you saying more interest above spot for now, like here? I'm asking a question, Hassan. Sorry. So you said more interest above. So are you saying more interest above this area into here? Yeah. Wall at 25 if we get above. We have to get above 25 to consider more call volume. There's more customers below. Yeah, yeah. So you're all saying the same thing. Um, again, don't get into like uh very don't get too pedantic. This is a big ass wall. If we're over this, we're gonna be bullish. If we're over this, it changes the entire sentiment of the day. This is a pretty big ass wall. Not saying you can't get through it, stranger things have happened, but just know that it is going to be difficult. Yeah. And as long as we're in this territory, you're going to be looking more short than you are long. Yeah, that makes sense. So that's your DDOI assessment. Stay in here, you're going to be looking short. If you happen to cross 25 for whatever wild reason, then you're going to be more chop. And I don't know, it's just a different story at that point. I don't have anything to say about this other than over 25, we're choppy, right? Yeah, 25 is a pivot. And I think if you've been in main chat, the past few weeks, I have called out 25, and I'm not the only one. Many people have called out 25, and we have come to this 25 level week after week, day after day. It's been like a magnet for like, I don't know what reason, but I think it pretty much started around this time frame. And I also use like kind of these big, strong levels for change in sentiment and change in direction or change in trend. So at the moment, the bear trend is still validated. It is still valid because we're below 25 and we're also below 40 and 50, which was it's kind of another one of these bars. Over time, you just kind of like pay attention to like, okay, you need to cross that to change the overall sentiment on a short time basis. I'm still bearish on kind of like a midterm, and I think we may even get into a bear market, but we need like 3 months to kind of figure that out, or 4 months to figure that out. Right now, that's what the overall picture's telling me. But then in these smaller time frames, I look at like a 25 level for like if we can cross and stay above 25, we can be more bullish. If we're under 25, and this is again from weeks ago, but we're back at 25, or we're still below 25, we're still bearish, okay, even on a shorter time frame. Okay, so that is all. You guys are really good. You guys are getting the concepts. And while we are relatively bearish, we see that 25 is a big wall. Let me play this. 25 is a big wall, and 20 is an area of interest. It's highly unlikely we're going to cross this. Yeah. Um, it's also a flip point. And remember what I said about flip points. When you do flip it, you're changing the board. Like like people are caught off sides. Like it's just like everything, like you're gonna have to have like hands off and reassess, you know. Sometimes you can anticipate going through the flip point. This is not one of those days that I'm anticipating that we get through a flip point, right? I'm anticipating we reject all of this area. Um, and again, your Vanna interest is here. If you did see, and this is why I don't trade the first 30 minutes, because I don't know what this looked like, but it was pretty messy in the beginning of the day. I think there was a 0 point here or a flip point here earlier. If I go back, I think I don't know, it was there. It was there for like a hot second. Um, that's why you just kind of want to wait, like let this like fill in, let this play out. We know this is the area. We know this is the area. I personally want to be able to, I want to see price form or continue to stay below 5,900 and take it down. If we get to 5920, like you don't know for a fact you're going to get to 5920. It kind of looks like we are. It kind of looks like we're going to bounce around here. You could take a trade, a short from 5920 and all the way down. The problem is because you have these two big bars, if you first short 20, you might end up just bouncing back and forth, right? So I'm kind of looking like I kind of want this area to go away, right? Like get rid of this, and just come into this territory so I can short it, right? This is cleaner. Then I know this mess is gone and I'll less likely have a pullback. Um, Does the Ivy skew? Yeah, I do tend to look at the Ivy skew. So I don't use it too much, but yeah, I will eyeball it, right? Like, skew, if you want me to just draw it first, just like real quick second. Skew. Quick. Okay. So like these are your bars, right? And say this is your skew. It's gonna have a harder time crossing to the downside when this is steep. right? So you want the steepness to become less steep, right? Or even I guess flip like this. Well, you get the idea, right? So you do see some skew changes to help. But I think that some of the other things that I pointed out are a bit more compelling. But yeah, you can definitely look at skew and keep an eye on that. Yeah, exactly. I like these big levels. 5,900, it's pretty important. Would you consider also that there's really no large call open interest like the size of a point, or is there small compared to what you see with bars? I mean, yeah. I mean, honestly, these are just kind of like small bars in general, which just means, I guess, I don't know, that it's just these are small. Like, okay, these flip point bars are small, but then these flip point bars are small too. It's more compelling when like these are pretty big bars, like some of the examples I showed you before, and then this is a small bar, right? Then it's like, oh, it's really not going to come here because all the interest is here. Remember when I was showing like all the interest is here on the other example? But let's kind of move through this and you can see how this plays out. Um, we're gonna go in like 30 minutes to like an hour increments. I personally am looking for this area to be like non-existent. Like I kind of want this Vanna to clean up, right? I want that nice wave, right? Like a nice clean wave. So I want this to like smooth out this area because then it can tell me, okay, we're ready to kind of move into this area. As long as, and you want to make sure this 5,900 remains, it's pretty tall. You want it to stay there because that will tell you it's going to repel, right? It's going to move away from it. If this bar starts getting smaller, like tiny, we can come back into 50, into this area, right? It's a different board at that point. So let's see. So we rejected, the 20 area off the open. Let's speed this up and see where we are at. So we get to 5,900 and yeah, because this is a big attraction point, we might just bounce around for some time until it cleans up. And you can see the bouncing around here. Again, this is like bouncing, but you have it. It's a pretty negative day. I still like the idea of shorts. I don't like it here because of this bar. I just don't like this. I want this to go away. So even though it looks like it's a downtrend, right? Like this actually looks like a great short setup. The only thing that makes me pause is how big this area is. If this is smaller, I wouldn't care so much, and I would go ahead and take that short. It's just way too big for me to ignore. All right, so let's keep going. Where are we? Okay, so it's like bouncing. Yeah, and sure enough, we pulled back. Um, Again, we got to cross the 20 level for us to be just like completely wrong with our theory here. And I just don't think we're going to get there. We're just going to bounce. Vanna, like you see how this is like pretty clean versus where we were earlier, right? That is also telling you, okay, I'm kind of right. It's cleaning up. At some point in the day, we're going to come into this territory. And from DDOI, we were looking at, I think 75, right? But where's 75 here? I think it's like, it's like 90. This is 90. I, all right. Yeah, this is 75. So 75 to 80 looks like a good area, right? You got to give yourself a buffer of like 5 points. Um, all right, so let's see. Let's keep going. What happens? Again, nice and clean. This bar is getting smaller, which means it'll be easier to cross. This is a really big bar, not crossing over at all. This is still there. This is annoying that it's still there. So I need this to go away. Otherwise, it's a problem. But generally speaking, we're still kind of like in the same direction. This thing is still there, right? So as long as it's there, it's going to hold the price up. there's just too much of a I don't know if it's going to come back to 20. It's just holding it up though, right? So that's kind of annoying. Um, so let's see. So, okay, now we're starting to break. Okay, so we did have a pretty decent break from 5,900. This is nice. So if you took the short, nice. We still have, I still don't like the fact that 5,920 is here. Um, but yeah, you definitely can catch that short. I mean, these candles are pretty strong kill candles, so I probably would have taken the short. But I kind of don't like this situation here. And also, yeah, this is where I'm saying like the 0 points are here. So eventually you want to get to here by some point in the day. But you see how this is a kind of a big bar. So that's like 80. Yeah, this is 80 because it's big and then it gets small, then it becomes big. Right now it's gonna have a hard time crossing 80. And eventually we wanted to get to 75, but even this looks like it could go lower. But right now I'm like, I don't know if we're gonna cross 80. So if you did take the short, just know that you're gonna have a hard time crossing 80 at this point. Yeah, the 20 did get shorter. You kind of just want it to be really small though. Like it's still too important. It's still too much of a pull. Like this versus that, kind of similar-ish in size. It's still too big for me to, completely forget about it. All right. And I don't like that this 80 bar is too big. I want this 80 to be smaller because right now it's telling me we're gonna stop at 80 and I really want to get to like 70, maybe 75. All right, so let's go forward. Yeah, like you see, we're rejecting 80. Like this is a pretty strong candle. If this closes, I don't know. We're just gonna like mess around in this area for a bit. Again, same story. We're back at 80. The 80 bar is still there. It's gonna have a hard time crossing it because it is big relative to these two tiny bars next to it. So let's just give it time. It's gonna take time to break through, but again, generally speaking, we are more bearish. So I have confidence that it will break. It's just going to take time. Well, what I said earlier about taking a short at 20 is you're going to be bouncing between this area. I'm trying to take a trade here, right? Because these are all zeros. I have a bigger range here. Not that this is not a bad idea. This is a great idea. I'm just talking about the bigger range. The bigger range is down here, right? Below 5,900. If I short 20 and you have this big bar, I'm going to get stuck. And if this is still a big bar, you're bouncing between it, right? Um, and again, here, this is a bar at 80. So this is why we're stuck and we're not breaking. And you have this bar, which is also holding up price. So we're like, okay. And it's now like 113. So it's still taking a really long time. But I'm still bearish, we're not gonna like it really doesn't look like we're gonna cross 20, right? Like that's still there. Not gonna cross the slip point. Again, our assessment from DDOI still holds. Let's just see if we can like get out of this territory. Like we're just doing back and forth because we are doing this ping ponging. I just want this to kind of like go away. Let's just fast forward. Kind of the same. Now we're at 905. I don't know if I have another recording for the rest of the day. Okay, so let's just go back here. So you see how we traded all the way back to 20. So that's kind of what sucks about taking the short here. Not that it's a bad idea. The only problem is you don't know what this path is going to look like. It could come here, mess around here, go here, mess around, come here, mess around. You just don't know the path. So, but you see how now that we hit 20, and it's our second time, kind of our third time, really. This is the first time, and it was at the open, second, third. I might be more inclined to take the short here. I do like these kill candles coming in, right? This is your price action. Um, and again, this 5,900 is a lot smaller than where we were in the beginning of the day. So as long as we cross it, we've got this nice clean path. You see how this is like shaping up into a wave versus before it was pretty empty. Yeah, it just stopped it. Yeah. Listen, if you can pinpoint all these moves, go for it. I'm just pointing out because you never know the path, right? Um, the bigger move to me is under here. But again, we don't even know how far deep it's gonna go. Like it's only gonna go like here, right? I just didn't want to get caught in the chop because when it chops, you don't know the path of the chop. Um, but this is, you're always just taking a trade. I honestly probably would have taken this trade because just because it's got strong kill candles. But let me see something. Oh yeah, I want to go back. Oh yeah, I want to point out here. This is 5,900 and it's a lot smaller than where it was before. This is why you want to be taking notes throughout the day. I will show you what it looked like before. Pretty big, right? We're just looking at 5,900, really big. Now it starts to get small, right? And then I think it kind of stays small. Oh no, it still gets big, back to big, um, big. But the point I'm illustrating here is when we get back to 50, when we get back to 20, this becomes relatively a lot smaller than the last time we were in this area. Which means like, okay, cool, we should be able to break this. And then you no longer have that resistance at 80. Remember there was like a bar at 80 before? You kind of don't have it. Wait, where is it? Like 80 is like somewhere over here. It's like not sticking out. Like, look, you see how it's like clean? So I'm like, oh, cool. Now we can take this lower, and this is nice. Um, so let me get to the other screen. The screen recording ends here, but I'm gonna flip to the other one. Where is it? Okay, here to see how it plays out. Okay, back here. Okay, we're at 5,900. We'll be able to pass through because we passed through so many times and look at zero. We're basically attracted to zero. Like all day, we've moved to it, then away, but moved to it and away. And as we're doing it, you're getting less interest here, less interest here. You're kind of like chipping away at this, right? And you're chipping away at this with every move back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, so that you could eventually get the move here. At least that's the play I'm looking for, right? Based on what DDOI is telling me, and just basically looking at the charts, but you've got like all this back and forth. So it's still chipping away at these levels. We're not there yet. And it's at 2 o'clock. You're running out of time, but at some point it should move into this area. So let's see where we are. Still stuck at 5,900. Okay, now we're below it. And this path is a lot cleaner than this path just because you get a little bit back and forth. I like this short idea. Let's take it short here. Look at these are beautiful kill candles, like just like perfect. Killing, like if you were anticipating this from like 20, you could enter here, but say you didn't or you weren't sure, you're waiting for the board to set up. Like, look how clean this is. Okay, it just like this is now back to the very first example I showed you when we had the bullish day and it was like super clean. This is super clean. It's the other way around. And that's what you want to wait for. That's what you want to look for. That's what you're tracking and anticipating throughout the day. This is perfect. Let's see if we could take it to 80 and um we want to take it to 80 and we want to break 80 this time because last time 80 was like a little bit of a bar and it was holding us up. I want to break 80 and trade into I guess I don't know, somewhere in this box. Because I can't really tell where it's gonna go. Okay, here, this looks like it's 80. This looks like 75. So somewhere around here, I want to take off the trade. And let's see, 80, yeah, 75, 80. But I want to break 85. Okay, I want it to be lower than 80. Let's see if we can get there. Okay, getting stuck. Okay, nice. This is a really good, clean price action. Okay, now we're getting into 80. We have pretty strong kill candles coming into the level. We sh we should have this area break because we've traded it so many times. I don't think it's gonna hold. Oh shit, it does hold. Okay, so let's see what happens. Okay, we're gonna come. Okay, so we're gonna come back into 5,900. We should back test this and break. I guess that's what it wants to do. I'm still looking for that break of 80. Like, look how clean, right? That's why I want that break. Yes, it pulled back, but I want that break. I thought it was gonna happen here. It didn't. Okay. All right, so now we're starting to break it. Like you see all the interest building here. This is starting to pop. Let's see if we can get into the 75. Here's your wait, this is 80. Yeah, this is now 70. So 70, 75. Maybe. Oh shit. Why are we? Oh shit. We're rejecting. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, we don't get there. Do we have to test? Oh shit. So we test 5,900 again. This is why, price action is what it is. But, all throughout, this never changed, right? I hope you're seeing that, right? This never changed. And once Vanna like sort of really maps out the path, you can pretty much follow it. So we only have 10 minutes left. Um, and oh, we did break 80. It's not like a huge break. I was expecting more of a break, but we are running out of time. So I don't really know how much deeper it's gonna go at this point. So you can take off the trade here. You're at 75. That was sort of the initial target from the DDOI, but you might actually have a little bit of more room down, but you don't have a lot of time in the day to get there. So it's kind of like a gamble at this point. Maybe you'll get there, maybe you won't, but you hold your runners at this point if you have them. And I guess we are getting there. Like you do have this, like this is like a little mini flip if you can see that, right? So it might not cross it. It's 56. You only have like 4 minutes left, right? Okay, now like maybe you'll touch this area, right? You're at 75, 72. Okay, you're trading into it, 71. And let's see, 69. Let's just speed it up and see where we get to. Okay, so we ended up closing at 67. Yeah, so we did eventually break 80 into 75 and then 67. But like these last few minutes, because it's market on close, you never really know if it's going to get to the target or not. Make sense? Okay, what does it say? Do you consider the BN plus minus for Vanna for any of the other Greek exclusive? What do you mean by BN? Oh, billions. No, no, I only look at this. I haven't tracked these. Maybe there's something to it. I don't know. Okay, that's basically all I had. I mean, I did have another example, but we're already at like this is a pretty long video. I don't want to make it too long. Where are we? Uh, but yeah, it's 12 and 19, 12 and 19. Yeah, this is just like me mapping out the day, like at one. This is how I would have mapped out Vanna on the example I just showed you. Um, I don't know what I was mapping out, but yeah, I was just mapping out levels. Target 60. So okay, I was targeting 60. Where did we get to? I forgot. How did we get to? We got to 66. Um, But yeah, it just gives you an idea of like where you want to set sort of your initial target. Not that you will get there, you don't know, but it's kind of like an area or a range you want to trade into. But yeah, this is basically all I have, you guys. I mean, there's another example, but this is, oh my God, this is already like 2 hours. This is way too long. Anyways, I'm gonna call it there. If you have any last minute questions, yeah, I have a Twitter, but I mean, yeah, I guess I could share it. What is this? Um, okay, thank you. I'm really glad that this is helpful for you guys. Early on the day, there was a big red candle on the 520. You know, is this something that's bearish? Oh, so you mean like, hold on, where are we? Yes, here. So Hassan, you mean like here, like this 20 is a bearish? Just because it's red, it doesn't mean that it's bearish. Like again, I don't really look at the colors to indicate if it's bearish or bullish on a candle specific. I kind of look at generally, is there a lot of red? Generally a lot of green. Um, Look, there's nothing to say that you can't cross 20 here and cross the flip point and become a bullish day, right? Like that is still a possibility. It is a low probability, just with the way the board is set up and with Vanna pointing this way. But say you get like a really drastic drop in VIX, and say you are like at the end of kind of nearing an end of a bear trend on a daily bear trend, you know, at that point you could cross 20, right? So it's not necessarily telling me that it's bearish. It's just it's a level. And I'm gonna watch it. I'm going to watch it with the initial reaction of a resistance. But you know, I fully recognize that I could be wrong. Before this class, I didn't have a solid understanding what to look at and thought I wouldn't get it, but this Zoom brings everything together. So truly, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. You're really, really welcome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, Vanna for the win. And I do think Vanna is the more difficult exposure to learn. I find that following Gex, I mean, when I started, I really just followed Gex and it was fine. Like I was able to trade with get this and like maybe speed. And I was like really confused about Vanna. I didn't even look at Vanna. Um, but once I rolled Vanna into it, I was able to hold my trades longer. I was able to get like larger ranges. I was able to get better entries, you know, and just really waiting for it to kind of set up. And some days I just won't even trade. Like the Vanna board yesterday looked really messy. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this. It was Iron Condor day 2. I knew the price was going to be suppressed. And if you looked at futures, if you looked at the DOM, it was basically like bots trading. There was like really low volume. And I'm like, you know what? I don't really care for it. I don't need to trade it. So I didn't even bother. Right. So if I look at Vanna and it's just like really messed up, I'm like, forget it. I don't care for it. Because then there's like nothing really pinning price, right? It's not really giving me a directional move either way. Are you on 3 minutes all day? Yes, 3 minutes all day for day trading. And I look at daily time frames and I have other charts just to give like a general sense of direction and like some macro things I look at just for like overall sentiment. But yeah, for like using the dashboard, I use 3 minute candles. Again, it works for me. I think you're fine with a 5 minute candle, 1 minute, whatever candle you want to look at. You just need to train your eye to something that you're good with. And I find 3 minutes is good for me. Hey, you're welcome. You're welcome, Devin. This is great. Yeah, I hope you get your Porsche. That makes sense. You're amazing. Good resource. Do you have a good resource for Gex or Gamma? I I don't I mean, honestly, it's like, listen, it's just not, don't overcomplicate it. Like, now that if you have a pretty good idea of how I explain Vanna, you'll have an easier way to learn gamma exposure. Basically, find the tallest bars, and those are your areas of interest, and you're either going to move to it or move away from it. And as long as you pair it with Vanna, I think you'll be fine. I don't really have a specific resource on Gamma. Uh, oh, how can you screen record? I used Loom, Loom. Oh, I spelled it wrong. It does slow up my computer, so I don't use it all the time to record. I like to take screenshots along the day, also. But yeah, you could use Loom. I think I pay for it. I don't think you need to. I think you could get free. It just makes the recording easier if you pay for it. I think it's like pretty cheap. I think it's $25 a month or something. Okay, yeah. This went like a lot longer than I thought it would, but all fine. Okay, cool. I'm gonna end the meeting here. If you have any other questions, you can, ask me in main chat. And oh, yeah, I can put what do you call it? My handle in Twitter. You can find me there. I think that's a 0. So go ahead and take that. And okay, and I think like if you guys have other questions or you want us to focus on like some other teaching modules, just, let us know in chat. And, we do have a couple of other tools that Mitchell's been rolling out. So I'm excited to put those together and kind of layer that onto here. And hopefully it'll just make it even easier, right? Like you just want to be able to like see the data and see the market in the easiest way imaginable. And I think sometimes like even Vanna, maybe some people may struggle with, may take them a while to figure out, but hopefully with the combination of these tools, we can all kind of get to a better understanding. But yeah, so feel free to ask questions in chat and I will end the meeting. Let me see if I close the meeting. Uh, wait, where is the meeting to go? Okay, stop. Okay.